never imagined I'd damage my marriage with a single line. It wasn't a thought I'd practiced or a belief I'd been hiding, waiting for the right moment to reveal. It spilled out clumsy and unfiltered, blurred by alcohol and self-importance. And the instant it escaped my lips, I felt something irreversible shift. The kind of shift that hits your chest before your mind can make sense of it, like a plank snapping beneath your feet. My name is Emily.
I'm 36.
And until that evening, I believed my marriage to Daniel was strong. Not flawless, not something out of a film, but steady in the practical way grown-up relationships are meant to be. We'd been together 11 years, married for 8. We shared habits, private jokes, a mortgage, and a quiet understanding that we were on the same side, even when life felt monotonous or heavy. That night began without any warning signs. A friend's birthday, a packed bar in Manchester, booming music, cheap drinks. Daniel hadn't wanted to come. He had an early start the next day, said he was exhausted, said he preferred staying in. I told him I'd be home by midnight. I told him not to stay up. At the time, it all felt sensible. I went out with colleagues instead, people I saw daily but barely knew beyond small talk. There was laughter, shots I didn't need, compliments I hadn't heard in a long while. Someone said I looked incredible. Someone else joked that Daniel was lucky. I laughed too loudly at jokes that didn't deserve it. I felt lighter than I had in months, maybe even years. By the time Daniel arrived, unplanned, unexpected, I was already several drinks past reasonable. I remember noticing him near the bar, coat still on, that familiar look of concern etched on his face. He wasn't angry, which somehow made it worse. He looked misplaced, like he'd wandered into a version of my life he didn't recognize. He leaned close and quietly asked if I was okay. Asked if I wanted to go home. I should have said yes. I should have thanked him for coming, smiled, taken his hand. Instead, I scoffed. I laughed and told him he was overreacting. We stepped outside to talk. Cold air, cigarette smoke, taxis rushing by. He said he felt foolish standing there alone while I brushed him off. He said I didn't seem like myself. His voice wasn't raised. It was weary, and that's when I said it. I don't remember exactly how we got there. I remember feeling defensive, trapped, humiliated in front of people I wanted to impress. I remember wanting to sting him just enough to shut the conversation down. So I said, maybe if you weren't so boring, I wouldn't need to drink this much just to feel alive. The silence that followed was instant and total. Daniel didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just stared at me, truly stared, like he was seeing a stranger wearing my face. I'd never seen that look on him before, somewhere between shock and quiet understanding. He nodded once and said, okay. Then he walked away. No scene, no last remarks. He simply turned and headed down the street, hands in his pockets, shoulders slightly rounded, as if carrying something both heavy and delicate. I stayed. I kept drinking. I laughed even louder. I told myself I hadn't meant it. I told myself he knew that. But every time my phone vibrated, my stomach sank. It was never him. When I got home close to 3 in the morning, the house was dark and unervingly silent. His shoes were missing from the hall. His charger wasn't on the bedside table. I stood there in my heels, makeup smeared, the room spinning. For the first time since I'd spoken, fear cut through the haze of alcohol. I checked the spare room. Empty. The garage. His car was gone. I texted him.
I'm sorry.
I was drunk. I didn't mean it. No response. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying his face again and again. Not angry. Not wounded. Worse. Resolved. Like a switch had quietly flipped inside him. By morning, my hangover was vicious, but the guilt was unbearable. The house felt wrong, like someone had already left it, even though everything was still in place. At 9 a.m., my phone finally buzzed. One message from Daniel, we'll talk later. I need space. It should have comforted me. Instead, my chest tightened, because I knew that space was exactly what I'd created, and I had no idea how wide that distance was about to become. Daniel didn't come home that night or the next. He stayed with his brother, he later explained, because he needed somewhere quiet to think. I told myself that was fair. I told myself marriages survive worse than a drunken insult. People cheated and recovered. People said crueler things in heated arguments and apologized. This was just one sentence, one awful night. But sentences carry weight when they land on truths you've been avoiding. When we finally talked, it wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no tears. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table like strangers handling something fragile. Daniel looked drained, somehow older. He didn't ask why I'd said it. He asked whether I meant it. I blamed the alcohol, the pressure, the foolish desire to feel interesting. I told him I loved him. I told him he wasn't boring. Even as I spoke, the words felt flimsy. He listened, as he always had. Then he said something that still echoes in my mind. You didn't say anything new. You said something you've been thinking long enough to say without caring how it landed. I wanted to argue. I wanted to deny it. But my silence answered for me. He told me he'd felt invisible for a long time, that he'd noticed how I brightened around others and dulled around him. That night hadn't just hurt him, it clarified things. He didn't want to be someone I merely endured out of habit while resenting him for not thrilling me anymore. We tried counseling, not because he pleaded, but because he believed in ending things properly. I went because I was terrified of losing him, not because I fully understood what I'd damaged. That distinction mattered more than I knew then. In therapy, patterns emerged that I didn't like confronting. How often I dismissed him, how easily I used sarcasm as a weapon, how I confused comfort with stagnation and blamed him for my own restlessness. Daniel acknowledged his flaws too, but there was a quiet finality in his tone, like someone already halfway gone. Drinking stopped being enjoyable after that. Every social gathering reminded me of what I'd cost us. Every silent evening at home felt heavier than the noisiest bar ever had. I apologized more times than I can count. Some apologies mend, others only highlight the fracture. 3 months after that night, Daniel told me he wanted to separate. He said it gently, like breaking bad news to someone he still cared about. He said he needed to rediscover who he was without constantly preparing for disappointment. I didn't fight him, not because I didn't want him, but because I finally understood that being wanted wasn't the same as being cherished. We sold the house 6 months later. We split everything evenly.
No lawyers. No hostility.
Just a quiet sadness that settled between us like dust. The day he moved out for good, he hugged me longer than I expected. He said he hoped I found whatever I'd been searching for that night. I told him I hoped he found peace. Sometimes I replay that moment outside the bar. I imagine stopping myself.
Imagine così in silenzio.
But life doesn't work that way. You don't get to erase the sentence that exposes the truth beneath it. What I said didn't end my marriage on its own. It revealed a crack that had already been widening, slowly and silently. Alcohol just removed my ability to pretend it wasn't there. Daniel is seeing someone now. Someone calmer, gentler, who laughs easily at his dry humor. I know because he told me not to hurt me, but to close the chapter. I'm glad for him, truly. As for me, I'm learning something I should have grasped much earlier. Love isn't about constant excitement. It's about care, respect, and understanding that your words can either protect someone or rip away their sense of safety. That night, I chose carelessness over kindness. And sometimes that single choice is enough to change everything.